Pope Leo XIV stood before the microphone in St. Peter's Square and remained silent for 11 seconds before saying only 3 words: "We have failed." Those words sent shockwaves across the world and shattered the Vatican's 14 months of silence on the Sahel crisis. The Pope's 47-minute unscripted speech did not only express humanitarian concern, but also directly assigned responsibility to governments, the global arms trade, and international institutions. It is already being described as one of the boldest speeches in modern Vatican history. The real reason behind the speech was not a scheduled event. On May 8, 2026, a private delegation of bishops from the Sahel region met with the Pope, including a bishop from Burkina Faso who had survived an attack only weeks earlier. The delegation reportedly placed physical documents and testimonies in front of the Pope. The exact contents remain unknown, but shortly afterward the Pope cleared his entire schedule. Vatican staff later described him as deeply shaken. The following day, Pope Leo ordered an urgent meeting and instructed officials to prepare a full public statement on the Sahel crisis, with no diplomatic softening or restrictions. In doing so, he bypassed the Vatican's normal diplomatic process. Vatican officials were reportedly concerned about the phrase systemic abandonment, calling it diplomatically explosive. The Pope responded by asking, compared to what those bishops described, is there any word too strong? On May 10, 2026, Pope Leo delivered his address from the Paul VI Hall and declared that the humanitarian disaster in the Sahel was not simply a tragedy, but the result of international neglect and failure. The Pope criticized global media and governments, saying the world only reacts to suffering that trends online, while the slow-moving catastrophe in the Sahel has been ignored for years. During the speech, he openly connected climate collapse with conflict, explaining how desertification, displacement, and armed group recruitment are all linked in a destructive cycle. Pope Leo XIV directly condemned the international arms trade, stating that weapons flowing from Europe, Russia, and Gulf states were fueling endless violence in the region. He called it a moral catastrophe with named perpetrators. The phrase "named perpetrators" caused immediate alarm in diplomatic circles because it suggested the Vatican may possess specific evidence and could eventually expose those responsible. Near the end of the speech, the Pope looked directly into the cameras and declared that if the Church has a voice but chooses silence, then it has chosen a side. He ended by saying, "I will not choose that side." Reactions across African social media were emotional and divided. Many people thanked the Pope for finally acknowledging their suffering, while others questioned why it had taken 14 months for him to speak publicly. When journalists later asked the Pope whether he regretted the timing of his response, he stopped and answered with a single word: yes. That moment became one of the defining emotional points of his papacy. European governments publicly supported the humanitarian aspects of the speech, but largely ignored the Pope's comments about arms exports and accountability. Some governments even requested clarification from the Vatican. African bishops and cardinals welcomed the speech but immediately demanded concrete action, including special Vatican envoys, funding commitments, and even a papal visit to the Sahel region. Inside the Vatican, reactions were divided. Some officials felt relieved that the Pope had finally spoken honestly, while others worried about the diplomatic consequences of such direct public accusations. Analysts believe the speech revealed Pope Leo XIV's leadership style, a papacy willing to prioritize moral truth over diplomatic caution when human suffering reaches unbearable levels. Reports suggest the Vatican may soon appoint a special papal envoy to the Sahel, who would report directly to the Pope and potentially bypass traditional Vatican diplomatic channels. The central message of the story is that the Sahel crisis is not just about statistics or political analysis, but about millions of human lives. A bishop arrived in Rome carrying testimony and evidence, placed it before the Pope, and that single meeting changed the Vatican's silence forever.